Welcome to WikiPodcast.
Hello.
Today marks the beginning of a fascinating mini-series where we're taking a deep dive into global philosophical traditions. And for our very first exploration, we're setting our sights on understanding the philosophical bedrock of Buddhist teachings.
A really rich topic to start with.
Absolutely. And we know our listener, the learner, is keen to grasp complex ideas quickly but thoroughly.
Without getting bogged down.
Exactly. So we're aiming for a shortcut, to the core philosophical concepts of Buddhism, maybe with a few surprising insights, and definitely without feeling overwhelmed.
Sounds a good plan.
Our guide for this journey is the extensive overview provided by the Wikipedia page on Buddhism. It covers history, fundamental beliefs, diverse schools. Quite comprehensive.
Wikipedia is often a great starting point for that kind of breadth.
It is. So our mission, to unpack this wealth of information, pull out the key philosophical nuggets, and help you, our listener, really understand the fundamental ideas shaping Buddhist thought.
Okay, let's dive in.
All right. So where do we even start? Maybe with the name itself. Buddhism.
Yeah, that's a good place. Because to really get the philosophical side, it helps to know it's also been called other things. Names that tell us something important.
Oh, like what?
Well, you might see Buddha Dharma, that's Sanskrit, basically meaning the teaching of the awakened one.
Okay, the teaching. Makes sense.
Then there's Buddha Dharma, literally the doctrine of Buddhists.
Doctrine, right.
And also Dharma Vinaya, which points more towards the doctrines and disciplines.
So not just ideas, but practices too.
Exactly. These names sort of highlight that it's not just philosophy in a vacuum, it's also a practical path, a way of life, and, a community.
That's a great way to frame it. So where did this teaching, this doctrine, this path actually come from?
Our source points to the eastern Gangetic Plain of India. We're talking around the 6th or 5th century BCE.
Okay. Ancient India.
Right. It emerged as part of what historians call the Shramana movement. Yeah, Shramana. These were wandering ascetics, thinkers, people looking for spiritual answers outside the established Vedic religious structures of the time. And Buddhism centered on the teachings of one specific person known as the Buddha.
The awakened one, as the name suggests.
Precisely. It's really interesting that it came out of that specific, very fertile intellectual and social environment.
So part of a larger trend of questioning and searching.
Absolutely. The Shramana movement was significant. It really shifted the focus towards individual effort, personal spiritual practice as the way to liberation, rather than just relying on rituals or birthright. Buddhism was one of several really influential movements from that era.
And from those roots, it certainly spread.
Oh, incredibly so. What's remarkable is its journey across the globe. Today, you're looking at almost 500 million followers.
Wow.
That's about 7% of the world's population, making it the 4th largest religion. It shaped Asian culture and spirituality profoundly for centuries before really catching on in the West, mostly in the 20th century.
Its influence is undeniable. Okay, let's zoom in on the Buddha himself, the founder figure.
Right. Siddhartha Gautama, born in Lumbini, that's present-day Nepal,
Okay.
grew up nearby in Kapilavastu, near the border with India. And he lived and taught mostly in areas that are now the Indian states of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh.
So what set him on this path? What was the trigger?
According to the tradition, the core of it was his deep confrontation with suffering, what Buddhism calls dukkha.
Dukkha. We hear that word a lot.
Yes. It encompasses the obvious things like aging, sickness, death, but also a deeper sense of unsatisfactoriness and this feeling of being trapped in an endless cycle of rebirth, samsara.
Right.
Seeing this really moved him.
Yeah.
Deeply. So he set off on a quest to find a way out, a liberation, which is called nirvana.
And how did he go about that search initially?
Well, first he studied with renowned meditation teachers. Aurora Kalama and Udaka Ramaputta are mentioned. He apparently mastered very high states of meditation.
But that wasn't enough.
He found it wasn't the final answer. No. Those states were temporary. They didn't bring lasting freedom from the cycle of suffering.
And then came the famous period of extreme asceticism.
Exactly. He pushed his body to the limit, extreme fasting, holding his breath, really severe self-denial. The idea was maybe to conquer suffering through sheer willpower and hardship.
But that didn't work either.
No, that also proved unhelpful. It nearly killed him, actually. It weakened him physically and mentally, but didn't bring the insight he sought.
So neither indulgence nor extreme denial was the answer.
Precisely. And that led him to the realization of the middle way. It was only when he abandoned those extremes and adopted a more balanced approach, specifically focused meditation, or dhyana,
Okay.
sitting under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, that he finally attained awakening,
Rocksteady.
the Enlightenment moment.
Yes. And during that experience, tradition says he gained profound insights. He understood the mechanics of karma, saw his own past lives, understood how mental defilements arise and cease, and ultimately how suffering and rebirth end.
And this confirmed the middle way. It did. It validated it as the correct spiritual path, avoiding both chasing pleasure and inflicting pain.
That middle way concept seems really fundamental. We should probably keep that in mind.
Definitely. It runs through a lot of Buddhist thought and practice.
So, after this awakening, he didn't just keep it to himself.
No, absolutely not. He decided to teach. He founded the Sangha, that's the community, initially of monks and later nuns, who followed his path.
The monastic order.
Right. And he spent the rest of his life, about 45 years, traveling and teaching this Dharma, his insights, and the path to liberation. He passed away at 80 in Kushinagar, achieving what's called final nirvana or parinirvana.
And his teachings were carried on by the Sangha.
Yes, preserved orally at first, then written down. And over centuries, this led to the different schools and traditions we see today, Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana being the main branches, each with unique emphasis but sharing core principles.
Okay, so let's talk about those core principles. What's the fundamental philosophical worldview here?
Well, at the very heart is the Dharma of the Buddha, the teaching itself. And central to grasping that are the three marks of existence.
The three marks. Right.
Impermanence, anicca, suffering or unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, and non-self, anatta, or anatman.
Anicca, dukkha, anatta.
Those three. Some schools add a fourth. Nirvana is peace, shanta, or shanti. But those first three are really the bedrock understanding of reality from a Buddhist perspective. Everything is changing. Nothing has a permanent essence, and clinging to things as if they were permanent and solid is a source of suffering.
Okay, let's unpack that cycle of rebirth, Sasar, a bit more. You mentioned it earlier. It seems crucial.
It really is. Sasara literally means wandering or world.
Yeah.
It refers to the cyclical nature of, well, everything, life, death, rebirth, even matter itself. It's a concept found in other Indian religions too, but Buddhism has a specific take, which is that Sasara, this endless cycle, is inherently dukkha. It's ultimately unsatisfactory, painful, stressful. It keeps going because of craving, desire, attachment, clinging to things. And also because of ignorance, avidya, not seeing reality clearly, not understanding those three marks.
And these things fuel karma.
Exactly. Desire and ignorance lead to actions, karma, which create the conditions for future rebirths within the cycle.
And the goal is to get out.
Precisely. Liberation from samsara is the ultimate aim, and that liberation is nirvana.
You mentioned different realms of rebirth.
Yeah, the text describes 6 main realms. There are heavenly realms, demigod realms, the human realm. Those are generally seen as more fortunate rebirths.
Okay.
And then there are the less fortunate ones. The animal realm, the realm of hungry ghosts, and various hell realms, where one is reborn depends on their past karma.
And nirvana is breaking free from all of that.
Yes, it's the blowing out, like extinguishing a flame. It means the cessation of the greed, hatred, and delusion that drive the cycle. It's achieved through insight, particularly into impermanence and non-self.
Okay, now, the idea of rebirth without a permanent soul. That sounds like a contradiction to many people. How does that work in Buddhist philosophy?
Yeah, that's often a sticking point. This is where the doctrine of anatta, non-self, is absolutely key.
Oh, that's that.
It fundamentally rejects the notion of an atman, a permanent, unchanging soul or self that moves from life to life. That's a major difference from Hinduism, for instance.
So if there's no soul hopping between bodies, what is reborn?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Buddhism emphasizes continuity, not identity. Think of it like one candle flame lighting another. The second flame isn't identical to the first, but it's directly caused by it. There's a causal link.
So a process continues, but not a thing.
Exactly. Different traditions explain this continuity in slightly different ways. Some talk about an inexpressible personality, avacca. Others focus on the stream of consciousness, vijnana, this flow of mental moments continuing.
Okay, a stream, not a fixed entity.
Right. And the quality of that stream, the nature of the next rebirth, is shaped by karma, the ethical weight of past actions. Good actions lead to better conditions, bad actions to worse.
That helps clarify it. The candle analogy is useful. So this brings us back to nirvana again, the ultimate goal, liberation. How is that state described philosophically?
Nirvana, or nibbana in Pali, is literally the cessation or extinguishing of the kleshas.
Kleshas.
Mental defilements, afflictions, things like greed, hatred, delusion, ignorance, attachment. When those cease, The cycle of rebirth ends.
And the way to achieve it.
Generally, the Noble Eightfold Path is laid out as the practical method.
We'll get to that path. But what is nirvana like? How do the texts describe it?
It's described in many ways, sometimes seeming paradoxical. It's called complete liberation, enlightenment, the highest happiness, bliss, fearlessness, freedom. It's also sometimes called permanence, but not in the sense of a permanent self, more like an unchanging state beyond the conditional world.
So beyond our usual concepts.
Very much so. It's often described as non-dependent origination, meaning it doesn't arise based on causes and conditions like everything else in samsara. It's said to be unfathomable, indescribable.
It's also linked to emptiness, right?
Yes, it's seen as a state of realizing emptiness and non-self fully. Interestingly, though, while it's the ultimate goal, our source notes that for many lay Buddhists throughout history, the more immediate focus has often been on accumulating merit, good karma.
To get a better rebirth next time.
Exactly. Aiming for a better position within samsara rather than immediate liberation from it entirely, though the ultimate potential is always there.
Okay, that makes sense practically. Now let's circle back to those key concepts, not self, anatta, and emptiness, shunyata. They seem really closely related.
They are, deeply. Anatta, as we said, is the specific doctrine about human beings. No permanent underlying soul. What we call me, or I, is just a temporary combination of these 5 aggregates, or skandhas.
The skandhas? What are those again?
Form our physical body. Feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral sensations. Perceptions, recognizing and labeling things. Mental formations, impulses, intentions, habits, thoughts. And consciousness, basic awareness.
Okay, so the self is just this bundle of constantly changing processes.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
And believing in a solid, separate self is seen as a fundamental illusion, a root cause of clinging and suffering.
And how does emptiness, shunyato, build on that?
Emptiness, or sunyata in Pali, takes this further. In early Buddhism, it often referred to the aggregates themselves being empty of a self. They are void, hollow, coreless.
Okay.
But in Mahayana Buddhism, particularly with philosophers like Nagarjuna in the Madhyamaka school, emptiness becomes a much more universal principle. It means that all phenomena, not just the self, lack svabhava.
Svabhava.
Yeah, inherent existence, self-nature, and underlying essence means nothing exists independently from its own side. Everything arises in dependence on other causes and conditions.
Like the reflection in the mirror analogy you mentioned.
Exactly. The reflection seems real, but it has no existence apart from the mirror, the light, the object being reflected. It's empty of independent reality. So emptiness in this broader sense points to the radical interdependence of everything.
Wow. So it's not nihilism, like saying nothing exists.
No, definitely not. That's a common misunderstanding. It's not saying things don't exist conventionally, but that they don't exist in the fixed, independent way we usually assume. It's a middle way between saying things are absolutely real and saying they don't exist at all.
That's a profound shift in perspective. Okay, our source also mentions the 3 jewels, the triratna. These sound important for practitioners.
They are absolutely central. The 3 jewels are the primary objects of refuge and reverence for all Buddhists: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha.
Buddha, Dharma, Sangha.
Okay, so the Buddha refers not just to the historical Siddhartha Gautama, but also to the principle of Buddhahood, the state of enlightenment itself.
Is the understanding of Buddha the same across different schools?
There are variations. Theravada tends to emphasize the historical Buddha as someone who became awakened through his own efforts, ended rebirth, and was morally perfect, a supreme human guide.
Okay.
Mahayana often has a much larger cosmology, with countless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout the universe, beings like Amitabha or Vairocana, often seen as transcendental, almost divine figures you can connect with for help. The historical Buddha might be seen as just one manifestation.
Interesting difference. And the Dharma?
The Dharma is the second jewel. It's the teachings of the Buddha, the truth he realized, and the path he taught, leading to liberation from suffering. It's the medicine for the disease of samsara.
The teaching, the path, and the Sangha.
The Sangha is the third jewel. Traditionally, this refers specifically to the monastic community, the monks and nuns who preserve and practice the Dharma full-time.
The ordained community.
Yes. But it can also have a broader meaning, referring to the Arya Saga, the noble Sangha. This includes anyone, lay or monastic, who has attained any stage of awakening, who has realized the Dharma directly. So it represents the community of realized practitioners.
So taking refuge in these 3 is a core part of being a Buddhist.
It's the fundamental act, yes, expressing trust and reliance on the Buddha as the guide, the Dharma as the path, and the Sangha as the companions and support system.
All right, so how does one actually walk this path? What are the key practices?
Broadly speaking, the path involves three main areas of training. These are often grouped together: ethics, or sila, meditation, or samadhi, sometimes called dhyana, and wisdom, or prajna.
Sila, samadhi, prajna. Ethics, meditation, wisdom.
That's the core framework. Sila involves ethical conduct, not harming, not stealing, avoiding sexual misconduct, not lying, avoiding intoxicants that cloud the mind, basically living in a way that doesn't cause harm to oneself or others.
Foundational morality.
Right. Then samadhi is about mental discipline, developing concentration, calmness, and mindfulness through various meditation techniques, training the mind.
Okay.
And prajna is wisdom or insight, developing a deep, direct understanding of the true nature of reality, those three marks we talked about. Impermanence, suffering, non-self, and also emptiness.
So they build on each other. Ethics supports meditation. Meditation clears the mind for wisdom.
Exactly. They are interconnected and support each other. Kindness and compassion are also seen as vital components woven throughout. And in some traditions, devotion, faith in the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas plays a big role too.
And this all relates back to the middle way.
Yes, the whole path is framed by the middle way principle, avoiding the extremes of harsh asceticism on one side and sensual indulgence on the other. Even the core doctrine of dependent arising, pratityasamutpada, the idea that everything arises in dependence on causes, is seen as a middle way view of reality, avoiding the extremes of believing things are eternal, eternalism, or that they just cease to exist completely at death, annihilationism.
Dependent arising. That sounds like another key philosophical concept underpinning emptiness.
It absolutely is. There are two sides of the same coin, really. Things are empty because they arise dependently.
Okay. Now, the most famous articulation of the path is probably the Noble Eightfold Path.
Correct. That's considered the fourth of the Four Noble Truths, the truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering. It provides a more detailed breakdown of those three trainings.
How does it break down?
It's divided into three main sections. First is wisdom, prajna, which includes right view, understanding the core truths like the Four Noble Truths, and right intention, having intentions free from greed, hatred, and cruelty.
Okay, wisdom first.
Then comes moral virtues,
Yeah.
sila, covering right speech, avoiding lying, harsh speech, gossip,
Yeah.
right action, following the ethical precepts like not killing, stealing, etc.,
Right.
and right livelihood, earning a living in a way that doesn't harm others.
Ethics in daily life.
Exactly. And finally, meditation, samadhi, which includes right effort, striving to prevent unwholesome states and cultivate wholesome ones. Right mindfulness, developing awareness of body, feelings, mind, and phenomena. And right concentration, developing deep states of focused meditation.
So those 8 components cover the whole spectrum of practice.
They do. It's a comprehensive guide to cultivating the mind and living ethically, all aimed at achieving wisdom and liberation.
Finally, before we wrap up the core concepts, our source mentions some specific Mahayana views. What stands out there?
Two things are particularly significant in Mahayana philosophy. One is the bodhisattva ideal.
The Bodhisattva.
Yes. While earlier Buddhism focused more on becoming an arhat, someone who achieves their own liberation, Mahayana emphasizes the path of the bodhisattva. This is someone who vows to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings.
Or everyone.
Yes. They postpone their own final nirvana out of compassion, choosing to remain in samsara to help others become free. So compassion, Kanoan, becomes absolutely central to the path, alongside wisdom.
That's a powerful ideal. What's the other key Mahayana concept?
That would be Buddha nature, or
Hmm.
Buddha Dhatu, sometimes also called Tathagata Garbha, the Tathagata womb.
Buddha nature, what does that mean?
It's the idea that all sentient beings inherently possess the potential for Buddhahood. There's an intrinsic, luminous, pure nature within everyone, like a seed of enlightenment, even if it's obscured by temporary defilements.
So everyone has the capacity to become a Buddha.
That's the implication. Now, this concept has generated a lot of philosophical discussion, especially regarding how it fits with anatta, the non-self doctrine.
Right, it sounds a bit like a self again.
It can sound that way. Some texts are careful to clarify that this Buddha nature isn't a permanent independent self in the way Anatta rejects, but rather the inherent potentiality for wisdom and liberation, which itself is ultimately empty of inherent existence. But it's a very influential and inspiring doctrine in Mahayana and Vajrayana traditions.
Okay, so taking all this in, the 3 marks, Sisara, Nirvana, non-self, emptiness, the path. If we try to boil it down, what's the core philosophical takeaway from Buddhism?
So what does this all really mean? I think Buddhism offers this really profound, quite intricate philosophical framework. It's centered on understanding why we suffer or experience that fundamental unsatisfactoriness, dukkha.
Right, identifying the problem.
Exactly. And it identifies the root causes in our clinging and our ignorance, especially our failure to see impermanence and the lack of a fixed permanent self, anaka.
And then it offers a way out.
Yes, the path to liberation and nirvana. And while the specifics vary across traditions,
Yeah.
Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, there's this consistent emphasis on cultivating ethics, sila, developing mental discipline through meditation, samadhi, and gaining wisdom, praja, a clear insight into how things really are.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. The idea that things we take for granted, like ourself, like reality being made of solid, independent things, that these are fundamentally misunderstood. That they're actually characterized by this emptiness and shunyata and dependent origination that just challenges our everyday assumptions so radically.
It absolutely does. It flips our usual perspective on its head. And that really leads to the important question for you, our listener.
Yeah.
How might really grappling with these core philosophical ideas, impermanence, non-self, emptiness, dependent arising, how might that actually change how you approach your own life? Your experiences of difficulty, of suffering, your perception of the world around you.
It definitely invites a fundamental reevaluation, doesn't it? Thinking about how we relate to ourselves, to others, to experiences. If there's no fixed me and everything is interconnected and changing.
It certainly provides a different lens through which to view everything.
Well, that concludes our first deep dive into the philosophical underpinnings of Buddhist teachings. This was the first installment in our mini-series on global philosophical traditions.
A great start.
We really hope this has given you, the learner, a clearer, more insightful handle on these fundamental concepts, hopefully without feeling too overwhelmed by it all.
There's a lot there, but hopefully presented accessibly.
Of course, this deep dive, as always, has only scratched the surface. Each one of these concepts, karma, samsara, nirvana, emptiness, Buddha nature, gosh, they could each be their own deep dive.
Oh, easily. Decades of scholarship and practice delve into each one. The richness of Buddhist philosophy offers just a wealth of insights into the human condition.
It really does.
And the nature of existence itself.
Thanks for listening. Write us in the comments your opinion on the episode and what other topics you would like us to talk about. Subscribe to the channel to help us reach more listeners. Thank you and have an amazing day.